All right, hello everybody, and thank you for joining today's edition of the Lunchtime Learning webinar series. My name is Brendan Woodruff. I am the DEC co-lead of the GreenNY Council, and you're stuck with me today. We're going to be talking today about sustainable winter outdoor recreation. A couple housekeeping things before we get started here today. Everybody is muted upon entry, so if you do have any questions as we go along, please type them into the chat box. I will get to them at the end of the presentation. In addition, we want to make this a little bit more interactive today, so if you have any kind of tips, tricks, things that you enjoy about winter outdoor recreation, type them into the chat box. Or if you also have any places that you go, we're not going to broadcast anybody's secret stash of powder or anything like that. But, you know, it always helps if there's a good cross-country skiing location or winter hiking or something to share with others. In addition, this webinar is being recorded. It will be put up on the GreenNY website afterwards. You can go there and go through our entire library of content, where we have a lot of different topics there for you to explore as well. The next edition of this webinar series is going to take place on Tuesday, January 12th at noon. It's going to be on avoiding greenwashing. So that's going to be a really good one with a lot of the different programs you see on the markets and claims and stuff like that. We're going to sift through it all for you and help break it down. So that being said, we're going to get started with today's webinar. So the agenda today, we're going to go over some winter outdoor recreation basics. We're going to talk about clothing, gear, zero waste lunches, planning where to go, a little bit about sustainable waxes, travel-related tips, and we're also going to touch on etiquette as well. So there's a couple of reasons we wanted to do today's webinar. The first is that we know that with the current situation with COVID and us not being able to do a lot of our normal activities, there's been a surge in people spending time and recreating outside. And that's going to be true this winter as well. They're going to see a lot of people, some of you on the phone or the line here today, might fall into this category, haven't done a lot of outdoor recreation and in the winter, and it's different from the summer. You've got to be prepared. There's different gear, different considerations and stuff like that, so we wanted to make sure that we get the message out on both how to do it right and how to do it sustainably. In addition, we want everybody to follow all COVID restrictions, protocols, anything like that. So as we're talking about stuff here today, some of the stuff is going to be post-COVID, in the post-COVID world, when we're hopefully back to normal. Some of it's going to apply to this winter as well. But just keep that in mind, that no matter what you're doing, make sure that you're following COVID-related protocols, and you can get more information on those from either the New York State Department of Health website or the CDC. One other thing that I've seen popping up recently with that as well is the issue of masks, especially with downhill skiing and even cross-country and snowshoeing as well. There's a lot of winter masks. You know, we always think of wearing face coverings. Some of them have holes in them so you can breathe, which is important when you're recreating or breathing hard. You got a good cardio workout going. But the ones with holes are not going to meet COVID restrictions. So if you are going to a place that's asking for masks, make sure that you're wearing a mask that meets CDC and DOH guidelines. The ones that have the holes in them are not going to do that. So just be cognizant of that as well. And we always want to do something fun for December. So we figured we'd talk about a topic that's a little bit more on the fun side, and is definitely not a excuse for me to show off a bunch of lovely photos to you that hopefully will get you thinking about outdoor winter recreation and wanting to get out into the mountains and into the woods as well. So we're going to get started today with some few winter outdoor recreation basics. So this fantastic graphic was put together by the DEC team, the Hike Smart New York and Adventure New York folks. I just want to go through this quick so everybody can see kind of the basics here of things that you want to have when you're hiking, and this would also go for any time you're going into the backcountry, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, ice climbing, anything like that. First, you want to make sure you have navigation on you, a map, compass, GPS if you have it. Insulation, make sure that you've got good clothing. Make sure that you have the gear that you need. It could be significantly different at the summit of a mountain than it is at the base. So you want to make sure that you have traction devices. If you need gaiters, if you need insulated boots, if you need poles, you know, you're going to want to have all that depending on what you might run into at the top. In addition, you want to have a light source. It does get dark really early, and if something happens or the snow is deeper you get caught out, you want to make sure that you have a way to get back to your vehicle. First aid supplies, you're always going to want to have those in the backcountry. An emergency kit, a whistle, signal mirror, flare, some way to call for help. A pocket knife is also helpful as well. Make sure that you have something to be able to create fire with so that you have warmth if you do need it. Nutrition, any kind of high protein, high calorie packs, trail mix, anything like that. Hydration, make sure that you have enough water to sustain you as you're going out there. And then also emergency shelter as well. That can be a space blanket, a tent, kind of ropes, anything to create some sort of shelter. So that's kind of, the basics of if you're going into the backcountry itself, what you want to have. So we wanted to cover that today just to make sure that you have that. And you can find more information about that on DEC's website as well. So clothing. Couple things here. When you're going out for winter recreation, make sure that you dress right for the day. You want to dress in layers. You want to have some sort of a moisture-wicking base layer. You want to avoid cotton, and you want to have a windproof or waterproof outer layer. So look at the weather, but also know that the forecast could be different. Things change, especially if you're out in the lake effect snow belt. You could expect a sunny day, and the next thing you know, there's 2 feet of snow coming down. So on the sustainability front, when it comes to clothing, thrifting and reusing clothing can both bring the price down and is more sustainable. So if you're starting out in outdoor recreation for the winter, it can get expensive really quick, especially when you start looking at gear. So if you're looking at clothing, think about, if there's a secondhand store or you can find stuff online, that's going to be a good way to bring the price down, especially if it's something that you just want to try out or if you're new to it and you don't want to invest a ton of money up front. If you are buying new, ensure that it's a quality garment that will last for a long time. I've found that if you do spend the extra money, it lasts a lot longer, so your cost per year, if you start amateurizing it, is going to come down a lot. If you buy the cheapest thing on the rack, it might last a year, it might rip, something else might happen. And it's not going to be as good of a deal in the long run, and then you've got all of the inputs that went into it environmentally that then are wasted, and then you have the waste as well that needs to be dealt with. You can also look for a couple of third-party eco certifications, such as Blue Sign, which focuses on chemicals that are in the clothing or used to process it, Cradle to Cradle, Fair Trade. Ecotech is one that we're seeing a lot more on things. I just got a new jacket for myself, and I saw that tag on it, or that certification, for the first time. If it has down or wool, there's a responsible down standard and a responsible wool standard, so those are things to look for as well. And I put this picture here to show you, and this gets into the next slide as well. You can see my glasses all fogged up there. I may be on top of a mountain, but I feel like I'm in a Florida swamp because I did not take my layers off and I was not wearing the appropriate gear. So you can see how that also, when you're not taking your layers off or not doing stuff, it can affect you in other ways, like not being able to see, sweating, and then 10 minutes later I was absolutely freezing. So make sure that even if you have the layers out there, that you're using them appropriately as well. So a couple other things on clothing. I did mention, that I got a new jacket this year. That one that you see there in that picture lasted me 7 or 8 years. So even though it cost more, it worked really well, and I got a ton of use out of it. One of the ways I was able to do that was to re-waterproof. I do that every year on my jacket and on my pants. You can get stuff online or in most outdoor shops, some sort of wax product or other things that you can then just wash it with, and it's going to re-waterproof it for you. So even if you can basically bring it back to life and have it last a lot longer. Make sure you have the right eyewear when you're out there. As you just saw that picture of my glasses all fogged up, make sure that if, especially at higher elevations or in fields, the sun really reflects in the winter more than you would think. So make sure that you've got some sort of sun protection for your eyes as well. And if you're using a cell phone, especially for navigation or for a way to let people know where you are, keep it in an inner pocket if you're able to keep it warm. Certain cell phones, their batteries die very quickly in the cold. I've seen that happen to a lot of people. So make sure you keep it in an inner pocket. You don't want it to get really sweaty, so maybe a medium pocket if there is such a thing. Or another trick that I've seen is people to put a hand or a toe warmer on the cell phone itself, and that way you've got it for navigation and communication purposes. If you no longer need something or you get something new, make sure that you donate it so that somebody else can get second life out of it. A lot of homeless shelters and charities do take jackets, and there's usually clothing drives in the fall. So if you are moving on to something else, make sure that you're able to donate that so somebody else can get life out of that piece of clothing. And if something's absolutely at the end of its useful life, recycle it. You can find resources. There's the NYSAR is an organization. If you search for them, they have textile recycling points throughout the state where you can find where to find those. They have a good locator on their website, so you can look there to get rid of that type of clothing. I put this picture on here for the gear one especially because you never know what you're going to find when you go out. It could be perfect where you are, and then you get up on a mountain, and yeah, it's not always the greatest day, so you want to make sure that you have the gear for it. So a couple things here when it does come to gear and sustainability. The gear industry, there's always a new latest and greatest gadget or thing. Some of them are super useful and helpful. Some of them are just kind of gizmos and gadgets that you might not need specifically. So think about that. You know, all of the emissions and other things that go into creating all of this gear, think about if you actually need that or if it's something that you can do without. Also, look for used and refurbished equipment to cut costs and be more sustainable. This is especially true if you're just getting into outdoor winter recreation. You know, skis, ice skates, snowshoes, cross-country skis. You know, you can find used and refurbished equipment. My downhill skis are secondhand, and they've been fantastic for me. So there's a lot of options out there for that, and that's also going to give the gear a longer lifespan. So those emissions that go into creating it and all the raw inputs last for longer, and they get amortized over a longer period of time. Also consider trading kids' gear with other parents as kids grow and change sizes. That way you're getting the most use out of it. It's always tough when kids are growing, especially with things like skis, where, you know, it seems like every other year you're having to get new ones. But if you do have other parents where you can, you know, share stuff with, it's going to make it go longer. It's going to keep costs down. Another thing is to look into manufacturers' sustainability plans and support companies that have strong sustainability initiatives. And this is going to be a theme throughout the presentation today, is support companies that are doing the right thing and let them know about it. One thing we've heard from companies, from you know, recreation sites and other places, when they do their customer surveys and they see people saying sustainability is a big part of why they support that company, they're going to get more leverage internally to be able to push for more sustainability initiatives. So it really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you support companies that are doing the right thing and you tell them that the people inside are then able to translate that into more sustainability initiatives. So always let them know that that's one of the reasons why you supported them. So another good thing to do when you're recreating outside this winter is to pack a zero-waste lunch. So make sure that your lunch is in reusable containers, and make sure that you bring reusable utensils as well. There's a lot of, you know, you can repurpose things like forks and knives and spoons and create your own little kit if you have them. Or there's a lot of really super lightweight options on the market now too, that if you're carrying gear or you're looking for performance and you don't want to have a lot of weight on you, that you can throw into your pack. One thing that I always do is you try and make it interesting. So if you make something different that you're going to want to eat, you're more likely to get excited about making that sustainable choice rather than you know, stopping on the way or on the way back to buy takeout or drive-through that's going to have a lot of waste associated with it compared to you just making something and packing it yourself. One of the things that I've really gotten into of late is cold Asian noodles with different types of sauces. They travel well as long as you have a sealed container that will not leak the sauce. And it's a good way to kind of explore different cuisine options. You can spice it up in a lot of different ways, and it works well, and it has a high calorie density as well. Also make sure that you keep your hydration in a reusable bottle or in a backpack bladder if you have one of those. That way you're not also carrying around that single-use plastic waste of a water bottle or something else. You're both eliminating it, and you're also less likely to accidentally litter. Wrappers that come on granola bars, energy bars, and other things can fly away very easily. I think just about anybody who's hiked or spent time outside on a mountain summit trying to eat an energy bar has watched a gust of wind take away one of their wrappers inadvertently. So if you do have it in thicker reusable containers, either that you package stuff into or if you make your own and bring it, you're much less likely to have one of those blow away in the wind. So planning where to go. That's another really important part of recreating outside this winter. So a couple things. On the sustainability front, you want to stay local as much as possible to cut down on travel emissions. That's especially true with COVID. And if you're new to this, you're going to become obsessed with the weather and tracking the weather to see where the closest spot where there is enough snow to do the activity that you're looking for. Unfortunately, as climate change has become worse and we're feeling the effects of it, we don't have snow everywhere we're used to. And so people are traveling further and further to get to snow to be able to recreate in the winter. And that's one of those positive feedback loops, if you will, where, we've put out a lot of emissions that are warming the world and are making it so we have less snow. So in turn, we have to release more emissions to get to the snow. And the more emissions you release, the warmer it gets, the further you have to go. So always make sure to track the weather, stay local as much as you can. If we get a snowstorm in your local area, make sure to check out your local trails. A great way to find those is to use resources such as the DEC Info Locator, which is, I've got an example of it here on the right. You can find local hiking, snowshoeing, and cross-country skiing trails. There's an actual layer on there for cross-country skiing, so you'll be able to see all of the DEC land in your area that has where the trails are designated for cross-country skiing. And it also has a topo map layer on it as well, so you can look at elevation, which is important in winter. You might live in a valley where a lot of our cities are. There might not be any snow there, but if you go up on the hill outside of town, you're more likely to find it, and you can check that out on there. And we also are going to have an entire Lunchtime Learning webinar series edition this spring on DEC Info Locator itself, so stay tuned for that if you'd like to learn more. Other spots to look for, state parks, land trusts, and land conservancies. Look for those in your local area. They're going to have a lot of spots where you can go as well. Local government parks, county forests, and things like that. And a lot of golf courses allow cross-country skiing in the winter as well. Make sure to check their website first to make sure that they're allowing access. And that's another option that would be local as well. So you want to take sustainability measures into account when you're looking at where to go. If you're doing something like downhill skiing, look up recreation sites that have strong sustainability initiatives and are taking action on climate change and make it at the forefront of what they're working on, and let them know that that's why you chose that facility. Again, as I mentioned before, that helps build internal support for them to take more action because they see that it's good for business and it's bringing customers in addition to being the right thing to do. Not every place is going to have a giant windmill on top of their mountain, making it pretty easy to see that they're using renewables. But go on their websites, check stuff out, and again, if you do go, make sure you let them know. I've talked to one ski area operator recently, and they said that about 10% of the people that took their survey said that the reason they skied there was their sustainability initiatives, and that has allowed them to keep pushing for more and more. That it seems like a very high number to me, and that's fantastic that many people are already thinking like that, because it does help us make a difference in these institutions. Also, wherever you're going, look for sustainable features and use them, whether it's a lodge or somewhere else. Keep a keen eye out, so when you're having your lunch, if you have food scraps and a place does composting, you're going to know after you eat lunch that if you have any food scraps, you can compost them instead of throwing them in the trash. So always be aware of your surroundings and what's there and make sure to make the most use of them. So navigation, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but just wanted to touch on this here again when it comes to where you're going. Always have a map of where you're headed if you can. especially paper maps. Sometimes you might have to print one out at home. That sounds kind of counterintuitive to sustainability initiatives, but we want to make sure first and foremost that people are safe. So if you have a map, if you have a compass, it's really going to help you because phones die in the cold. Also, you can take a picture with your phone of the trailhead map if it's possible, but again, always have that paper backup. So you can see here is a cross-country ski trail system on DEC land outside of Warrensburg. It's a really nice spot along the Hudson River. I hiked there recently and I took a picture of it, and you can see there's a number of different trails, and just using my phone I was able to navigate around pretty easily. But again, you don't want to have to rely on that, so always make sure you do have a paper backup. So some travel tips when it comes to lowering your emissions through traveling to your spot. Here you can see some EV chargers at a ski area. If you do downhill ski, a lot of ski areas are starting to put in EV chargers, so if you do have an electric vehicle or you're thinking about getting one, keep that in mind. I know from a state government perspective, these 6 ports are in Gore Mountain. Orta is also installing some at their other facilities as well, so something to keep an eye out for. I've used this before, and this is kind of for more post-COVID times, but it gives you a pretty good analysis of travel emissions. Flying, obviously, is most of us are aware, is going to have the most emissions per person. Driving alone has a lot of emissions. And, you know, with COVID restrictions, carpooling is not an option now, but in the future, especially if you're having to drive further into the mountains, to get to the snow or the place you're going to recreate, making sure that you can carpool in the future post-COVID once it's safe again is something to think about because it will significantly lower your emissions. The Thruway Authority and other highway service systems have a lot of park and rides. So even if you're, you know, somebody that you're going with is halfway up along the way, one of you can leave a car at one of those park and rides, and the Thruway has maps of their park and rides that you can see. So that's a really good option for traveling as well once that is safely available again. So if you are staying somewhere, again, this is both post-COVID time and now. I just wanted to re-up this from a previous webinar. Think about the fact that something might be free where you're staying, but it is not free when it comes from an environmental standpoint. You can see here, I took this picture of a continental breakfast in an accommodation I was staying at last year. And every single thing there comes with single-use plastic waste. You know, from a health and safety standpoint, a lot of times that's why they're doing this, to make sure that things are out there like that. But depending on what your plan is, you know, think, do you really need everything you're taking that's going to create that waste or not? And are there ways that you can limit that? So you can see here I've got my reusable coffee mug that I always carry with me and bring into the accommodation to get coffee in the morning. That way I'm not using some sort of a polystyrene foam cup or something else. And again, just think about what you actually need. Also think about, you know, single-use water bottles. Sometimes accommodations put out, you know, do you actually need to take that and use it? And also toiletries as well. So for myself, I've found that I've started using bar shampoo, bar soaps and things like that, and I just bring them in my travel bag as well, so that way I don't have to use the single-use plastic toiletries, most of which are small enough to where they can't be recycled. So something to think about there. Also the general tips, you know, reuse, ask for your sheets to be changed every 2 or 3 days instead of every day, reuse your towels. And then again, kind of think about, you know, what you actually have to use and what the impacts of that are. So wanted to talk a little bit about sustainable waxes here, and this is kind of a new and growing area. One kind of comment on this photo too, and a couple of the ones we've got on here. One of my favorite things and favorite times of the year is December because the light is absolutely fantastic. You know, there's almost kind of a perpetual twilight feeling towards the end of the day, and at sunrise it seems to just last longer. Either that or I'm actually out in the mountains at those times. But if you can, sometime around the solstice, especially in the afternoon, get outside, get a vantage point, and it's just the most beautiful scenery in sunsets and colors that you'll ever see. So that's a good thing to look for as well. So on the wax front, certain outdoor recreational activities are going to require wax. Downhill skiing, sometimes cross-country, depending on what you're looking for. Most of these are generally petroleum-based. So would come back to our to oil here. Oil isn't everything, it seems like, and that seems to be a theme of a lot of our webinars here. But a lot of these waxes in the past have been derived from oil, and you can think about the emissions profile of extracting that oil, refining it, putting it on your equipment, and then having your equipment kind of leach it along the trail. So there are bio-based waxes that are coming on the market. A lot of these also don't contain perfluorinated compounds. That's another issue with waxes. Perfluorinated compounds, longer chain ones like Teflon, you've probably heard of. There's been issues with water supply and other things. And some of the waxes that have been used in the past do contain those. So another thing to make sure you're cognizant of is if you're waxing your equipment, make sure that your room is well ventilated, that you're taking all the precautions that are on the package that the manufacturer of the wax recommends, and wear some sort of breathing protection if you can, to make sure that if your wax does have those compounds in it, you are protecting yourself from that, especially downhill skis and snowboards. If you're scraping it at the end, you're going to get a lot of particles up in the air. You want to make sure that you're protected and just follow whatever the manufacturer's suggested PPE is for that. So a few more just general travel-related tips. Bring a waste reduction kit with you. If you can, I like to have you see one of my little ones here. Utensil, straw, cloth napkin, water bottle, coffee mug, and nowadays a small bottle of hand sanitizer. You can just throw this in your backpack and use it for lunch as well, which has always worked out well for me. Another thing, more for post-COVID times when we are able to travel much more, is use local public transport if available. So if you're going to a mountain town out west or in the east, a lot of them are now offering shuttle services throughout the towns that are really, really fantastic to get to either the mountain resort or some of the trailheads and things. And a lot of them are adopting electric buses at a much quicker clip than other cities and metropolitan areas because they are kind of smaller and more nimble. So, kind of plan it out. See if you actually do need to rent a car on that trip, because there are a lot more kind of bus routes that are coming online. They're usually super convenient to where you're going because that's kind of the goal of it. So just keep that in mind when you're planning your trips once we get to our post-COVID world. So a couple things on etiquette just here really quick at the end. And again, I wanted to highlight another photo of you don't know what you're going to find. And there's beauty in just about everything in the winter. That looks like a pretty nasty day to be out skiing, but, I had a fantastic time and I got to see something that most people don't see. And that's one of the things that I really like about winter outdoor recreation is that you always kind of feel like you're in a special environment where nature's putting on a show just for you. Especially up in the mountains, because that's usually not a hospitable environment where humans go. A couple quick things here on cross-country skiing. Stay in track if there is one there. You can see here's an example of one. Let others pass if they're behind you and coming up. You can just sidestep out of the track there to let them go. If you're snowshoeing, avoid being in the cross-country skiing track. Stick to the side. If there's a snowshoeing track, stay in that. But make sure that you do protect that cross-country skiing track because that is important for the folks that are cross-country skiing. And for all activities, sign in at the trailheads if there is a sign in there. That way the folks running it both have use information and they have contact information in case something does go awry, heaven forbid. Make sure that you stay within your ability. For a lot of these things, there are different color-coded suggestions for, trails. Make sure you know where you're at, especially this year. That is really important, and I can't emphasize that enough. Our first responders are already strained due to COVID response. The last thing they need is to be doing a lot of rescues as well. So make sure that you stay within your ability. Let people know where you're going. Never go into the woods alone, into the backcountry alone. And make sure that you do have a plan. So with that, before we ride off into the sunset today, I will take questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box here. Again, also feel free to type in any tips you have, anything you've done in the past, or other things as well, and we can share those with others. So thank you very much, and let's see, we'll answer some questions here. So we got one question here that's, what's the difference between a bus and a coach? And that is a very good question. Usually a bus refers to something that you would see as a city bus, something that usually has some standing room. A coach is more kind of a long-haul bus, so you'd see it with the comfy seats, cup holders, usually a bathroom, and they're designed for longer haul travel, and they're usually a little bit more comfortable as well. And let's see here if we have any additional questions. And again, if you do have any questions, please type them into the chat box. I've got another one here. Where are your favorite places to hike? So personally, I have not done a lot of winter hiking. I do a lot of downhill skiing and cross-country skiing. In general, I do a lot of hiking in the Adirondacks. This summer, I've discovered the southeastern Adirondacks around Lake George, Scroon Lake, in that area. There's a lot of smaller hikes there that are off the beaten path that were phenomenal. They were less crowded, and I can imagine they would be really nice places to go this winter as well. So you can check out the DEC info locator or local land trusts and things like that, and they are fantastic resources. So another question that came in here, any suggestions for learning how to navigate with a map and compass? Yes, that is a very important skill to have before going out into the backcountry. I would say if you have a gear shop that you work with, ask them. Sometimes they will offer classes. There's also online classes. The other thing I will suggest with that is to make sure that you practice before you go out with a map and compass. Go out in your backyard, make sure that you're comfortable and able to go from point A to point B efficiently with that and safely. So check your local gear shops, and then also make sure that you can use that. Another question here, favorite trail at Gore Mountain? That is, I will not give up any of my secret stashes there. But I would probably say the Dark Side Glades if I had to pick one, over underneath the High Peaks chair, which is new this year. They've got a nice pitch to them, and that kind of dark side over there is where I like to spend a lot of my time. When will you post this to the GreenNY webpage? This will be posted soon. We'll get the recording, and hopefully in the next few days, this will be posted on the GreenNY website, and you can find it there and share with others. Where is your favorite place to ski with kids, and where is the best place to go outdoors during the pandemic with kids? So, favorite place to ski with kids, I would say any of the local mountains. I grew up in central New York, and all of the ones in that area are fantastic. I would say start small. If you're, look for your local places. A lot of them also have really good deals on, I'm not sure this year with the pandemic, but lessons and things like that. So I would say, find your local hill, support your local hill. They're going to need it this year with, everything that's going on in capacity constraints, and they usually don't have the resources if they have a bad winter or something else to get through. So best places to go with kids, I would say go on the DEC info locator, look up your local land trust, and find local spots near you. I've gone through this fall and found more places in the Capital District and in the Mohawk Valley than I ever knew existed. And a lot of them are just small. Like I found one behind a box store that was about 15 minutes from where I live. And it was great. There was like 2 miles of trail though. There was no one there. Great for kids and everything else. So I would say look for those spots. If you're in the Albany area, the Pine Bush is a great spot to go. And the local land conservancies. There's the Rensselaer Land Trust and the Mohawk Hudson Conservancy. Those are great. If you're in the Mohawk Valley area, the city of Utica has some really nice parks with some switchbacks and other things that are really nice to go to in the winter as well. Another couple places that do have classes potentially for using a map and compass, the Albany Pine Bush, and again, some outdoor retailers do have that as well. So the Albany Pine Bush is a place to try. Another good comment here is renting gear to make sure you enjoy the sport before buying. That's much easier when it comes to things like downhill skiing and stuff like that. But another thing I didn't mention before is for cross-country skiing. There are some cross-country ski areas where you can go and you can actually rent equipment and do other things. They groom the trails. They maintain them really well. So if you want to try cross-country skiing, look for a spot like that that has rentals, and then you can see if you like it. And then again, if you do, look for, do you really want to spend all the money on the new equipment, or can you find used equipment that works just as well? Another person just mentioned the issue of PFAS in waxes and also in clothing. Some outdoor gear, you're going to want to look for that, especially the outer layers, because PFAS seems to be in a lot of consumer products. So make sure, if you're looking at waterproof gear, check and see if that is something that is in the outer layers. So that is a good point there. Let's see, do we have other things that have come in? And again, if you do have any further questions, feel free to type them into the chat box or other things here. I'm just going to check. And I guess the final things I would leave you with while we're waiting to see if there's any more questions that come in is, make sure you're prepared. Know before you go, follow the weather. I would say over-prepare as much as you can. Make sure that you're good to go. And then follow all of the, COVID-related restrictions that are out there this year. And again, the masks issue as well. Make sure that you're wearing a COVID-approved mask from either the CDC or that meets CDC or DOH kind of guidelines instead of the kind of face masks that have holes in them too. Another question that came in, any recommendations on heated gloves and attire? That is one that I started doing some research in myself this year, knowing that I'm going to be spending even more time outside. So I don't have any right now. I would say, again, this kind of falls into the gear trap of looking at, is it something that's absolutely worth it? One of the cost-benefit analyses I've kind of done when it comes to things like heated gloves and socks is that I always have to use toe and hand warmers, the individual packet ones that you get, and that's a lot of waste. At the end of the day, you've got the plastic wrap that's on it, the plastic wrap that's around the bulk container of it, you've got the sticky pad piece of plastic, and then you've got the actual warmer itself. So if it's something you're going to use all the time, that's something to take into consideration. But then also know that it's another electronic device that's going to have some e-waste in it. And obviously, you're going to want to see if you can amateurize it over a lot of winters to get the most benefit out of the new equipment that you're getting. And just again, for folks, if you do want to watch this again or share it with others, it is being put on the Green New York website, a recording of it, so you can find it there. And I will type the address for that into the chat box here. And I'm just going to see one more time if there's any final questions here. I'll just give it a second. Or if you have any other comments that you'd like to share with others. And seeing none, I want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. And, stay safe, but enjoy the outdoors. Just because it's cold doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the outdoors. And as I mentioned before, it is one of my favorite times of year to be outside, especially here in December with the fantastic light we have. So if you haven't before, find a viewpoint around 3 to 5 o'clock, somewhere around the solstice, kind of soak in the peacefulness of hopefully there's snow, of just the sound dampening quality, and just enjoy the color show that nature puts on. So thanks a lot, everybody. Enjoy winter, And we'll see you next month. That's, again, Tuesday, January 12th is our next one on avoiding greenwashing. Thanks a lot, and have a good one, everyone. Bye.